Thanks for joining us on another Sisters Talk on Granny's Front Porch. It's just Jennifer and I today, and we're going to continue a conversation that I started with part one of talking about our dad, Floyd Dee Adams. And Krista and I had a little talk in the video previous to this. So, hey Jen, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm in the office for my office today for a little bit more privacy. So the settings are a little different, and I'm in town, so you may hear town noises in the background. I'm in the town of Pahoa, Hawaii.
Yeah, I'm actually at my home, but I've brought a little friend along. No,
I love that. That's Granny and Wade when he was about, I think he was 2 or 3, maybe 3.
Yeah,
2.5.
Oh yeah, he's such a cutie there.
Oh,
So anyway, I just wanted everybody to kind of feel like they're on Granny's front porch during this talk. I'm going to share a little video. Just came to my mind this morning. So bear with me. It is the agenda. While I pull up the video, do you want to just share what the 4 rivers are and just a little location?
okay. So Jonesville, the old downtown part, is situated at the confluence of 3, some people say 4 rivers. There's the Black River, and there's the Little River, and then there's, what other river am I missing? Black River, Little River, Tensas, and Washita. Yeah. And I think some people say that like the Washita is a little over to the side on the other side of the peninsula of Trinity. So it's kind of like a 4th river over there, but you can say they all converge. And at that convergence on the corner there in Jonesville is what all the locals call Magnolia Hill. And I believe it was mound, I can't remember the mound number. It might have been mound 1 or 2. It used to be kind of a place where people came up, like where people would come in boats. I think in the native times, some of the impressions I've got is it was a gathering place. But it, I don't know if I kind of explained it. They call it Magnolia Hill because there used to be a hotel there called the Magnolia Hotel a long time ago.
Yes, and I think this location, as you can see on the screen, I think this is one of the places where our parents had one of their first dates, but I'm just going to play it for a moment. So just enjoy 43 seconds of nature for just a minute.
Where I used to come before I bought the property. When I wanted to visit Jonesville, I'd often park down there. And then Magnolia Hill is on the corner. So I'm trying to do a diagram so you can come up here, but on this side, there's a levee. It turns into the levee. And if you continue down this side of the levee, I don't know how far it is, if it's like a mile. I don't think I've ever measured it. I think probably maybe half a mile, maybe less. If you keep going this way, the levee in the town of Jonesville runs right beside the Little River, and the Little River is right here. If you turn on Mound Street is where the cafe used to be that our grandparents had. So this is a pathway our family has walked a lot.
Well, what I wanted to share was that the thought of this is where, who knows if Krista was conceived there or not. But
No, I think that was all at the in the house where you're living now, because my partner Val John was asking for specifics, and I said, it depends on when you believe we enter this dimension. If you believe we enter the dimension when we're born or when we're conceived, but all four of us actually were conceived
yeah.
where you are right now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yes. But yeah, yeah. Well, what I was gonna say is the thoughts of there at where the Four Rivers met, mom and dad having a date there, it just made me think of all the children, the Four Rivers. Krista goes, that we all converged from that location. The Four
It's
Rivers.
true.
Yeah.
It's true. And I think it
Represents one child per river running off. It's kind of neat.
Speaking of dad, it's so funny that you should bring that up, because he's been on my mind a lot. And I was reflecting on what you and Krista said about how we all had different relations with him and different experiences of him. And I think birth order has something to do with that. Also maturity, like Krista and I kind of took the hardest hits, right?
Yes, right.
As we described yesterday, parents tend to mellow as as they were young parents, but by the time you came along, and certainly by the time Brady came along, because there's 10 years between me and Brady, 8 years between you and Brady, who was their youngest. They lightened up a lot by the time Brady came along, and they're pretty strict on me and Krista. And some with you too, but I think all parents tend to do that.
Yeah.
But I was the second born, and Daddy always wanted to have a boy. So every time Mama got pregnant, back then you didn't really know what the gender was, right? In the early 70s, until you had the baby. But every time Mama got pregnant, he was like, "Oh, it's my boy." So they had Krista, and I think Daddy was hoping I'd be a boy, but they called me a tomboy. So I always just kind of took on some of that energy. I mean, I remember when I was 4, I thought I was a boy, just because they called me Georgie Porgy.
Oh, that's right.
And it didn't occur to me, that I didn't really understand the difference between boys and girls. But anyway, yeah. So I had that relationship with Dad. Like, I would help him when he would be fixing the car. I'd go out and hand him his tools. I helped him on his work sites when he was a carpenter. My main thing was handing him, tools and just kind of hanging around while he was doing this thing. And I think that was my way of being valuable to him and having a relationship with him. So that was one thing. And it was a difficult relationship. But one of the times when I was living in Vicksburg, as I've spoken a lot, my dad's health was declining. And at the time, we didn't know how fast it was declining, but I would often drive down from Vicksburg, Mississippi to Faraday, Louisiana, where he was living in kind of a retirement situation. And so a lot of times I would visit him, go run errands with him, come down, take him to the doctor, take him to the store. And then a lot of times he would go on my excursions with me. But one afternoon we drove, as I call myself, I was courting the home place again, trying to work my way back to that space and going and visiting it a lot. So Dad went with me one afternoon, and we went to the Four Rivers right there at that park, and we parked. And Mom and Daddy got married at the First Baptist Church that's right there, just a few streets over. It was where Granny went to church when she lived in town too. And he told me the day he got married, that he parked over there and got drunk at the Four Rivers Park.
Oh.
before he went in. And I was like, okay. He knew, he was scared. He was 18 years old with a baby on the way, but he loved her so much. He loved Mama, and you could never say he didn't. It was his own kind of love, but he really was passionate about her, and that never did change.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah. that is, I may just share something real quick while I have you on here. Yeah, we talked about with Krista earlier a little bit about Dad's alcohol issues, and that I feel like he spent a lot of his time, not getting the answered prayers that he wanted, the answers the prayer that he wanted from God. And he wanted that thorn taken from his side, the alcoholism. I mean, the alcohol, whatever, you know what I mean. He would pray, and it wasn't just alcohol. We won't go into that, too much about what all his issues were, but he just imparted to me earlier. I was like, what do you want me to share from your Bible today? And I just think it's so important to your ancestors' Bibles. And if you're blessed to actually have that, and there may be other books from different people with different faiths and religions that your ancestors are going to have written notes in, that's just a wonderful place to, look inside what they're thinking. I saw some notes in his Bible. Also, I'm going to mention 1 Corinthians 4:16 through 17 and 1 Corinthians 3:10 through 11, which is talking about Paul is talking to the churches and, be built and what it should be, how it should be constructed. So here's notes. What are we building upon? Is the building right? Should we should not defile the temple of God. We are the temple of God. You'll see that, you should build it upon Christ. And Dad struggling with his alcoholism. He probably struggled with the feelings of he was defiling God's temple. He was too hard on himself.
Oh, definitely. He was harder on himself than God is, for sure.
And that's when it says defile not the temple of God, because we are his temple. Prayer was very important to my father. And he just jotted down some notes. And I just want to share because this is what I think he wants to impart. He just said, number 1, pray in awe of the true God. Number 2, obey God and ask in faith. Number 3, ask according to God's will and in Jesus's name. And number 4, pray to God with all your heart. And he had shared Jeremiah 29:10 through 14. But Jeremiah 29:11 is a scripture that has always resonated with me, and I'm just going to share that. This is the King James Version. For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Now, other versions have hope and a future, I believe. Even though my dad had a hard life, I think his connection with the Bible and with God and Christ and really kept him sane. Was one of his tools that he used to help him be sane, even though sometimes the Bible was used in ways to control situations. So things that the front porch, he also has a little bit of an influence on all this too. And that's all I wanted to share. We don't have to revival.
Well, one thing Daddy always said to me, we had a lot of times we'd be driving around and he's like us, he was a deep thinker.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We would have deep conversations a lot of times when we'd be driving around different places. And he always told me that he felt like, who was it, Abraham, who didn't get to see the promised land, or was it Moses? I get mixed up. He said, Moses, he's like, I'm going to be like, I know I'm not going to get to see the promised land, he would say. And I, often didn't know how to respond to that. He and I had especially the last few years, would have some very deep conversations. And it's funny because you tend to lean more Christian, and Krista's more, Chris embracing other forms of spirituality, and I'm kind of just somewhere in the middle, right? But sometimes when I'd be talking to Dad, I'd be sharing with him some of my spiritual perspectives that, maybe didn't follow his view of Christianity, because different people have different views of Christianity.
Right.
His was really, I wouldn't even call it traditional, because, his
It was not traditional.
But he didn't have the mental space to include some of the things I was saying, which was okay. But I think he still had a view of Christianity until he passed. He had a view that was kind of more punitive,
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I wanted to share was that, I've talked in different times about I can kind of see things sometimes, and I don't like to label it and say what it is. But my dad and I got very close, and although he was very difficult to deal with in the end, because there were mental health issues, there was emotional, he was emotionally unhealthy. And he could be hard to deal with. Sometimes he would be completely normal, and then all of a sudden it would switch to something just crazy, and you would be like, whoa, okay, your head's spinning because you didn't see that coming, type of thing. So he could be, you never knew which one you were going to get. You never knew if you were going to get the same person, the highly intelligent person who could talk about highly intellectual conversations, philosophical conversations, and then sometimes he would just be in this state of I don't even know what other word to say, just kind of in his own world. So that was difficult, but we did have a lot of connection, especially in the few years before he died. I got very close to him. So when he would say, I feel like I'm going to be Moses, I'm not going to get to see the promised land, I didn't actually know what he was talking about, because he didn't really believe in heaven, did he?
I don't know if he did or not. And I'm not sure if I understand what heaven is either.
Yeah.
I don't.
He was very hard on himself. But I did have a couple visions when he died. Like I said, there was a part of us that was very close, and we got the call, I believe it was early one morning in the middle of the night, right, that he had died.
Yeah.
Because he was having trouble letting go. And we were going to the hospital every day, driving from Jonesville, because the three of us were staying at Jonesville, and we were driving to Alexandria and spending time and coming back, and he was really having trouble letting go. So it occurred to me just from somewhere that we needed to not go. He wasn't going to be able to, and he was in a lot of pain. I said, if we don't go, he'll pass.
I remember you saying that.
Right. It's just a feeling that I guess Spirit gave me, or God gave me, because we had all made amends, and he loved that energy that we were all finally, all finally getting along and loving, and everything was forgiven, and he just didn't want to leave, but it was time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't go we said, okay, we're not going to go back. And if we don't go back we'll say we'll give it 3 days.
Yeah.
But I think on the second day that we didn't go back, we said our goodbyes and everything.
Yeah.
He did pass in the middle of the night. And so we got the call, and then it was early in the middle of the night when the nurses called, and then I went back to sleep for a few hours because it was still dark.
Yeah.
And When I woke up again, it was morning, it was late morning, and I was sitting in my bedroom, but right before a lot of times I see things like in between sleep and wake. I don't know if I'm awake or asleep,
Yes.
but I started to see that I was aware that he was showing me where he was.
Yeah,
And
Jen, please share that.
he was going down this tunnel. I don't know if it was, I think it was purple. It was kind of a round tunnel, and it was round, but but he was flying down it almost like he's in the galaxy, right? So he's flying down, but his body, whatever form it's in, is in the center, and as he's going down this tunnel, it's curving in because the magnetism of his body is causing this tunnel to curve in.
Right.
So it's having the shape of a heart as he's thrown through the tunnel. And then the scene changed, and all of a sudden he is in what looks like this kind of red, bright, glowing space.
Yes.
So I'm not quite sure like what that was, because some of the interpretations are, to me that he went somewhere with red and bright, or I hope that wasn't hell. But anyway, it was. I didn't get that feeling at all.
No, I don't think it was.
I didn't get the feeling at all. I got the feeling that it was like maybe back in somebody's womb. And I was like,
Oh no, look, I mean,
but there's different things. But what I did get is like, 'cause sometimes I can still feel him communicating with me. So I feel like when you die, it's not just one place you go. Like, I feel like from what he's shown me and others that have passed have shown me, it's like it's a variety of things, because our soul is so complicated. It's so big that it's not like you just die and your soul goes one place. I mean, part of your soul that did do the work gets to go on to higher things, and the soul part that didn't get the lesson might have to come back. And then the soul that is kind of just, I think it's a variety of things. I think we're multifaceted as spirit beings. We're not just one human being, and we can't look at it like that.
or what if you choose like my thoughts of the afterlife is I really don't think of heaven. But Enoch is one of the people that I just love in the Bible, and that I don't even think he died. God said he just
Ascended.
Ascended, and he walked with God. So that has always been in my heart. That is my goal of an afterlife, is I just want to walk with God.
Well, there are allegedly monks and other places on the world who just ascend into light body.
Yeah.
Some people say that in the Bible that's what Jesus did.
Yes. And if you do want to believe in reincarnation and you want to come back as a dog, well, maybe you do. But I
don't try to say I know, because I'm not dead yet.
Yeah.
All I can do is say what I pick up from others, that, because I kind of do have I hate using the word medium, because I don't try to do that, but I get communication. It's been that way all my life.
I mean, I close myself off to that side. One, because it was the way I was kind of brought up in the Christian. You don't mess around with that kind of stuff, but but I've been asking God to, open up my mind to that, if it is what he wants me to do. And I do feel that I just got communication from my father through his Bible. So I just said, God.
Well, you did. And you know what he did? He brought the fact that you brought up the 4 rivers, Emily, that you brought that up, and that he and I had sat there and had a very deep spiritual conversation, because in the context, he was always talking about how he regretted all the years he drank when he was married to her.
Oh.
See, he was talking about his regrets. I didn't know it at the time, but even then he was preparing for death. When you start to reflect over your life, I feel like that's why he showed me the vision, because we would argue about, forgiveness and what what's going to happen. Because I think when he died, he thought he was just going to die, because that's how he was taught in the church we were raised in, right? Until you're resurrected, you're just dead.
Right.
That was the teaching. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think so.
But I think he was just showing me, hey, we were talking about what happens after we die. Well, here I am.
Yes.
Floating down this purple tunnel.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I was given from spirit was that, sometimes people come in here and their gift to the earth is that they live a hard life. We may judge my dad and say, oh, he was sober for 20 something years, and then he went back to drinking in the last years, and it really destroyed his health, and he went downhill from then. But some people might come here to have that experience, to have that dark experience of being a human being. But what I was given an image of was when he left, and this is the part that just made me so beautiful. I saw him take a big, how you see the pictures of Santa Claus with pulling the big bag.
Yeah.
He took a big bag of darkness out with him. He took it off the planet.
Oh.
He gathered that darkness and he took it off the planet. And that was a sacrifice he made. And I was given that image, and it helps frame it for me.
Yeah.
A lot of that darkness had to do, even though we didn't grow up in any of the tradition, we certainly had a lot of the trauma from being from what the Native Americans went through, right? We're so many generations out. We don't even look at it. My DNA profile only shows a little bit. But the trauma that came through his family from that, there's so much trauma and mental illness and addiction problems and family problems. There's also a lot of beautiful things about my dad's family. They learned, and I have just from family conversations, there was a lot of things. And then that article you found, there's a lot of references to mental illness on my dad's side way back. But I see that directly related to what the Native Americans had to go through being on the reservation. I mean, there were so many things that I think some people might think are very private about that family story, so I won't talk about it right now. But Daddy was a tortured soul. He was a tortured soul. And
yes, he was.
He experienced a lot of things in his childhood that hurt him deeply and that he never recovered from. But those things were also experienced by his parent, his mother, and her mother before her mother. And those things get passed down. And I feel like he took a lot of that out when he left. So, I mean, that's kind of how I view it. And I'm trying to carry on with healing those things as well. And when you bring up, and when you're doing your research, Emily, and you find these things that our great grandmother went through, or, that's our opportunity to understand how these things trickle down to Dad, how they trickle down to us, how they're still impacting our brother.
Yes.
And how, what we can do is just try to do whatever part that we can address, we address. But one of the most beautiful things about Mom and Dad's story, which, it's a lot, because it took me years to see the entire picture that's forming right now. About Jonesville, and how Mom and Dad end up there, and how we end up being born right there on that site. But we had made a video that discussed some of the woo-woo of our lives, and it got deleted. So I decided, well, that means that that's not supposed to be. But Daddy used to always say to me after Mama died, there was something that brought us together. There was something big about our relationship. There was something, like he could feel the importance of them coming together. the importance of them having us born. And, you know, I can appreciate that. But one of the ways I see that is that mom's family being from Catahoula Parish
Yes.
on both sides, her dad was down from Larto Lake area, Marksville area,
Yes.
and her mom's family having deep roots in Manifest, Louisiana.
Mhm.
So mom's family goes way back. I think we have found a great grandfather who fought in the Civil War. And in Marksville, we can find the LaPrairie, Joseph LaPrairie. So we my mom's family has been in Catahoula Parish for a long time. But then Daddy was born in Oklahoma because they're all, his mother was living in the Oklahoma area around the Creek Nation, Muskogee Creeks, and then she married somebody and they moved to Faraday when Daddy was, I think, was he said about 8?
Maybe so. I was gonna say 11, but I think it was 8. It was 8.
Yeah, because his dad worked for Ashland Oil Company.
Yes.
He did something with the oil rigs, and that's why they got transferred to Faraday, and that's how my dad's family ended up in Concordia Parish, which is just across the river from Catahoula Parish, in between, Catahoula Parish and the Mississippi River. So they live closer to the Mississippi River side of Louisiana. So mom and dad met, and he had the Muskogee Creek heritage. But the whole time we were growing up, we never knew anything about that, right? We were just growing up at Granny's house. We knew nothing about it being a sacred site there, about the Troyville earthworks being there. We knew nothing about that. In fact, I did not even find out anything about that until I started, I think it was maybe 2013, 14, before I even found that out. And I was already having the vivid dreams and wanting to go back before then.
Oh.
And then it all started coming together. And then there's these 3 books that somebody wrote called Jonesville Through the Mirror of Time. These 3 little paper bound books that you can buy at the library. And I was reading through one of those, and it talks about how some of the people had theorized that the Muskogee Creek's ancestors had been at this Troyville site where we're now living. And I thought to myself,
Wow.
somehow Dad has brought the natives back to the site through us.
Oh, that's a
Somehow the land has come back to us through their union.
Jen, I didn't even think of it that way. That's beautiful.
So that's kind of how I view it. And I was like, wow, there are bigger things going on than we know. And I know that Muskogee Creeks are not the only ones that have, and that are attached to that site. I personally, through my research and through just my own intuition, I feel that was a grandmother site for multiple tribes, just Southeastern tribes in general. I think it was a holy meeting place. And so, the Creeks plus the Choctaw plus the Creek plus the Seminole plus, whoever else.
Mhm.
So we can't just say it's a Muskogee Creek site, but we can say that we probably do have ancestors that were once there related to us. And, even if it's just a little tiny bit. But that's kind of how I frame all of it with Dad. He had a wonderful sense of humor. He struggled really hard. I started feeling him really strongly the other day, I guess, in preparation for this. Plus it's, in 3 days, it'll be 7 years since he died. And even though it was hard, he was hard to deal with. I miss the times, go spend time with him. I don't miss the trauma, but
No.
I don't miss the bad times, but I had some good times, especially there towards the end.
Mhm.
We got to spend time together.
I mean, he would get in moods where he didn't want to have any interaction with people and would put signs on his house, private domicile, only postmaster allowed, everyone else could be shot.
That was the crazy part.
It was just- Or we would,
Yeah.
or we would make arrangements to travel out of town to meet up with him and then to come visit. And he was nowhere to be found, you know?
Yeah, he did some dark things. He definitely had trouble interacting in a consistent way with others. I mean, unless it was a superficial relationship, he did well with his, people he worked with.
Yeah,
But when it came to family, definite
yeah,
issues getting along with. It's almost like the closer you were to him, the harder it was to get along with him.
yes.
Like a intimacy problem.
That's so true.
Mhm.
I think we might have already mentioned it. I never really was sure that Dad was proud of us. You know, it was, well, there was a little bit of narcissism that he didn't really want to acknowledge our accomplishments. As a parent, me having a child now, I want my child to excel more than I did. I'm here as a, I'm here to help him excel. And I think Dad sometimes was just so wrapped up in he was narcissistic, I guess.
Well, he was needy and he had a lot of abandonment. He
Yeah.
was needy and he had a lot of abandonment issues, and his maturity, some parts of him were still that little boy, that scared little boy. And not to speak ill of anybody, but he had an abusive childhood.
Yeah.
And I know that like just like he has brothers and sisters that also, just like we were saying, didn't have the same experience that he had.
Right.
Some of the younger kids,
Yeah.
but for him, there was some very abusive things that went on, and I don't think he ever healed from it.
Yes. But it has made me aware when I'm looking at his, he's like a tornado of drama, and sometimes you can be sucked into it. And it makes me be careful in my own life, that sometimes I get that way in my home, where everything.
Oh, I definitely still see.
Me,
Yeah, I still see the trauma
and I
and his trauma that I still carry
Yeah,
sometimes. We like my partner's been, talking to me about being present. I'm sometimes not
hard.
present.
Well, we were kind of, it was kind of, we were shown examples of, I wasn't really shown, we weren't shown healing. Just always suffer. I mean, we had some fun times, but being, you're always focused on the trial that you're in, not just being and enjoying.
Well, I thought it was always such a contrast between our parents. We were, I sometimes tell people we had one parent that was one extreme and another parent that was another extreme.
Yes.
I mean, mom was she was so able to connect with people, and daddy was not so much. So they were like extremes. She came from a very warm, connected family, and dad's family wasn't so much. I think they have developed that more over the past few years, but when they were younger, no, they had their way of connecting, but it wasn't the same. So we've seen both of those modeled. We've seen how like extremes. So I'm kind of trying to learn how to balance that.
Yes.
I mean, I can't say that everything was perfect on mom's side. I think there were things that maybe they didn't talk about, but I think that was on both both sides is people don't often want to talk about things. And I thought about that a lot. And us doing these videos, I feel like there
Yeah.
are probably going to be people and or family members who say like, oh, we shouldn't be talking about personal stuff. And maybe we shouldn't, but that's the kind of conversations we had on the front porch. And I'm not going to talk about anything that I think would really hurt anybody or offend anybody, but
Part of me, when I'm editing these videos, there's part of me like, do I stay on script or do I let us go off on tangents? And if we're being true to the sisters talk on Grady's front porch, we keep the tangents in. That's part of it. Just see
well,
what-
and I've thought about maybe y'all want to talk about something that I don't want to talk about. I'm sure you might feel like if Krista and I start talking about certain ways we view things spiritually, it might make you uncomfortable.
Right.
Or like even some of the things that you and Krista said in Daddy's other video. I said, oh, I'm not sure if I want to talk about that. But then I was like, but no, I don't need to control what they say.
Yeah, I was trying to decide.
And I don't need to control, all I need to be worried about is what I say.
Yeah,
And then I still might say too much,
that's true.
but that's okay.
But also, nobody has to listen to us.
See, that's another thing. I feel like these videos will fly right past a bunch of people because they won't even care.
Because really what we're doing, I mean, we're sharing stories, but
I mean, we're doing it for us, but we're just doing it to keep the front porch energy alive. And then I thought about it and I said, front porch was on the front porch. The whole world wasn't listening. And the whole world can listen to this. But that's okay too, because guess what? Community we're in a larger community than we used to be.
Yes.
Family is spread out everywhere. I miss the family reunions we used to have. I mean, people used to have family reunions. I mean, I back up and manifest those, generations. A lot of those people, the Wrights, they live a long time. They have longevity in their blood. And we don't get to have that anymore. And even our cousins and everybody, me and, we're all spread out. On mama's side, the cousins are spread out. And, we have cousins in Louisiana, but now I'm gone. Everybody's kind of spread out. And how else can you maintain those connections? Because people are spread out. So this is another way we can.
Yeah. But I'm glad you mentioned about Dad. It didn't dawn on me that, it just reminded me that he was, I think we kind of do soul talk. I think somebody's called it soul talk.
He was way into soul talk.
Oh my goodness. We might have been more influenced by soul talk from him than we were Mom.
Oh, he got deep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He liked to get deep.
And that's a heritage I should be proud of.
Yeah.
That he did model that for us.
Oh, and I keep wanting to say this too. When we were finding out some things about our great-great-grandmother in that newspaper article that said something about her that we were like, whoa, it was hurtful. And maybe you'll go into that at one point.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to share it or not.
Yeah, it's kind of maybe it's other family members might not want that out there.
Yeah.
But anyway, it is. I thought about some of the mental health issues that came down through, and I'm thinking about the trauma of being, rounded up and taken to a reservation and marched across the country and then controlled and basically put in a, landlocked situation, prison camp or whatever you want to call it. That stuff, I was feeling bad. And then I heard a spirit say, do not be ashamed of mental illness because that's how they survived.
Yeah.
You go through that horrible situation and maybe some people who couldn't snap died. So really mental illness was a way they survived, and we're still here. And Those people are still here. And I'm not saying that mental illness is okay. I'm just saying it was a coping mechanism for some very sick things that happen to a group of people.
Yes.
Therefore, I am thankful that they had their mental illness. I'm thankful for it
Well, Krista had
because that's why we're still here. Now we can heal it.
mentioned the diet, and how when Dad was growing up, he lacked. Sometimes they didn't know where their next meal was going to come. I mean, they didn't have. I remember a story. Let me articulate it better. I remember a story of they would go when they were kids. They would go and play in the woods, and the neighbors would be like, "Oh, we got to go." They heard their mom calling. And they're like, "Oh, we got to go home for lunch." And they were like, "Well, we just said, oh yeah, we do too," but we had no idea what they were talking about because they only ate once a day, and they had no idea what lunch was. But they would get porridge and get nuts.
Yeah, Daddy said he'd be starving. They would eat Johnson grass and green plums.
Oh,
because they'd be hungry. And I'm not going to go into why that happened or what that was about.
Yeah, no,
starvation was a thing for him.
But I was going to say, I'm sure that I'm bearing. I mean, I'm overweight, and yeah, food's if I'm not.
There's some trauma in there. There's some trauma in there for us that got carried forward because
still not over the food, the fear of lack of food.
Yeah, even when we have no evidence of starving. I mean, you have food, I have food. It's not like food's not there, but there's this thing that feels like.
I mean, and I just sometimes pack it on like, I'm about to hit a lean winter. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I tell you what, it's kind of what I'm going through right now. I've done the intermittent fasting, and the main reason I do that is because of being diabetic and not wanting to take medication. And it is, my diabetes is the kind that is easily controlled by my diet. So I know some people have to take medication. Mine's not to that point at this time. If I stay away from carbs and sugar, and if I fast from time to time, I'm able to control it. But he's gotten really out of whack for me at the end of the school year this year. I'd really gotten I wasn't taking care of myself. So I had to do some strict getting myself back in order. But can't remember where I was going with this. Oh, when we first found out, like Krista was talking about, how right after Daddy died, my blood sugar, I went to the doctor because I was just feeling weird, and my blood sugar was like 365. It's supposed to be around 100 normal. And she's like, "Oh, you're diabetic." And I'm like, "Oh." And I know stress can sometimes bring stuff on, but we have diabetes on both sides of our family. Granny had some diabetes. I think one of our aunts has diabetes. And then our uncle on Mama's brother had diabetes, right? Yeah. So Granny's was mild too. She controlled hers with just a little bit of, I think she just took a little bit of a pill. Wasn't too bad, but I can work on that. But I had done the intermittent fasting, but never did it from a spiritual perspective. I had just done it because I was trying to control my blood sugar, which it was very helpful. But since the summer has started, I have done some fasts, but this time I have, not only am I focusing for keeping my blood sugar down, I am also doing it, and I'm incorporating the spiritual aspects of fasting. And there's so much in the Bible about fasting, so many cultures. I mean, other spiritual people, Native American spiritual practices had fasting. Other religions use fasting. There's something about fasting. And, you can just do the fast to control your blood sugar, or you can do the fast and incorporate all the spiritual principles that fasting can bring. And so I've been using those. And, you know, Daddy used to fast sometimes. I remember Daddy fasted 3 days one time. I did a 3-day fast week and a half ago. And when I do a fast, I do drink water. And I might take a sip of pickle juice to keep my electrolytes balanced. But you know, fasting is very I began to understand. I was listening to some preachers online too talk about what fasting can accomplish for you. But when you think about, I started to feel this concept of, you know, we want to shove things in our body. We want to shove things in our body. But for me, when I'm shoving stuff like sugar and things that are not good for me, I'm not allowing God in, you know. But something about the fasting, you think you're doing without, but actually you're receiving this abundance of spiritual energy when you fast.
I rarely get to that point.
Well, because I did a 2 or 3 extended fasts, I've done like a 27-hour, you know, a couple days. I did 2-day and then I did a 3-day. You do begin to say, okay, I lessen my physical body to take in more of what God has to say to me. Or you could just hear spirit when you quiet, when you, you know, so you start to take in more of God.
Yes.
You know, and that as a spiritual practice, if you have to think about, okay, I'm not eating the sugar, but what abundance am I going to get from not stuffing my body full of stuff? Other types of abundance will come, you know.
Yeah. That's right. Well, was there anything else you wanted to share? Any good memories about Dad? I think we've gone very deep, but maybe that's where we need to stay.
I really wanted to, all the things that you and Krista said were so true. I mean, he was hilarious and he was a mess. And I think you guys focused more on when we were kids. But after that perspective, I wanted to focus on his last few years. I wanted to focus on what I saw him do spiritually.
Yeah.
And you know, there were a lot of things that were embarrassing about towards the end, when he'd be riding in the scooter all over Faraday and falling off of the sidewalk into ditches because he was drunk. You know, that was rough. But there was also the part of him that that loved God, like you said, and had a heart. I cannot think of anybody who was more tender and vulnerable than him.
Yeah.
And he took it all out with him when he left. So I thank him for that.
Yes.
And he still comes and sees me sometimes.
Oh, I meant to say that one bluebird was on the porch today.
Really?
Just one baby. So I guess that was Dad.
But the one that comes to see me now and encouraging is he's healed.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well,
I think that's a good place to end it.
Yeah, let's end it. Thanks for your time. I'm just gonna say till next time.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.